Hey, everybody, welcome back to another Motivation Monday podcast for Monday, April 9th, 2018. How are you? Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you're ready for the week ahead, ready to get some work done on the instrument and continue your journey as a musician. So, today, what I wanted to talk about with you guys is something that actually surprised me a lot. As you know, last week we released our 100th episode, and we did something that was kind of different for us. We went over kind of on the surface, a very simple topic, playing scales in a different way, right? So, sort of breaking out of our box of just playing scales up and down and doing some certain things like that. And I actually surprisingly got some negative feedback on this, or maybe not surprisingly. I think maybe I was expecting this. Um, a lot of people said, this is your 100th episode. I can't believe you did this kind of boring topic for your 100th episode. But I wanted to kind of clarify that a little bit and speak a little bit further on actually why I did that and some of the philosophy I have on teaching music so that you guys kind of aren't surprised about some of the topics that I'm going to be covering in the future. So, one of the big things with jazz, especially now, with a lot of people teaching online and some of the stuff that goes along with that. So, you got to think about the fact that social media and doing anything online is all about views and likes and all that kind of stuff, right? So, a lot of people will post, videos or podcasts or whatever, and I've definitely been guilty of this too, with like, titles like "This is the hippest thing you will ever play in your entire life," or I've done this before, crushing line over 251 progression or whatever, right? But the longer I do this, the more I realize that people out there are really in it for quality information. And the headline might get you to click on it, but a lot of these lessons, and again, I'm guilty of this, are a little bit superficial, right? So if I were to show you a really amazing line, of course you could unpack that and you could turn it into something amazing in your own playing. But as I get further along on this journey of, putting out the podcast every week and teaching online and becoming more visible, I really want to get more to the heart of the matter when it comes to getting better at jazz in music in general. And I actually planned episode 100 to be something that on the surface is really kind of a mundane topic or might seem boring or something like that. But if you really unpack that episode, it's really the key to everything, right? So taking something simple like a major scale and really spending a lot of time with it and trying to figure out how can I use something as simple as a major scale to its fullest potential. How can I figure out every single angle within this scale? How can I figure out every single way of playing it, every single way of arranging it? How can I make it super difficult on my instrument? How can I make that scale challenge my ears as well as my fingers? These are the thoughts that are really going to get you very far in this music. So rather than taking a super complicated line that's probably over our heads anyways and spending a week on it and then moving on to something else, as I get further in my journey as a musician and as I get a little bit older, what I find is that I'm spending a much longer time on the building blocks of music. Stuff like major scales, stuff like intervals. This is really the key. And as I talk to more of my favorite musicians in the world that are just the giants of this music, the more that I realize that's what they're doing as well. Because if you think about this, if you have a bag of tricks, for lack of a better term, so you have a bunch of licks that you play in this particular spot, or you have a bunch of licks that you play in another particular spot over another set of chord changes, or maybe you have a bunch of licks that you play at a certain tempo. Um, and then other things that you would play over a slower tempo. And then you have some stuff that works over a super fast. You guys get the idea, right? I don't need to go on. You're kind of working yourself into a corner a little bit. And what you're doing is you're arresting your creativity a little bit there. Whereas if I take a major scale, which I will say a major scale is really the basis for probably 70 to 80% of all jazz harmony. You know, the much more advanced stuff comes from other scales, but major scales will get you very, very, very far in this music. I would much rather figure out all of the different ways to manipulate a major scale, because that's going to get me a heck of a lot further than memorizing a bunch of licks. And that's why I always emphasize on this podcast, whenever I do present you guys with a line or a chorus of somebody's solo, I really like to emphasize, now don't just take this and memorize it in all 12 keys. Really unpack the heart of what this musician is doing with this particular example of their playing, and then try to manipulate that in your own way. So I just felt like I had to kind of address this this week, because I did get that feedback, and I wanted those folks out there that, you know, maybe thought, well, this is really just boring. It's a bunch of different ways to play a major scale. That's what you should really, really be working on. That and your ears are really going to get you the furthest with the least amount of material. So if you were to take a week and block off a week of your practice time, pick one major scale and really, really try to manipulate it in as many ways as you possibly can, you're going to get so much out of that, rather than trying to memorize this really hip diminished line, working on it in 12 keys, not quite getting it there, and then quickly moving on to something else the next week. I've practiced like that in the past, and it's taught me things, but I think that going deeper on a more limited subject is a much better way to do it. And actually, this Friday, we're going to start talking about some more theory stuff so that you can understand really the way that this music works. So I'm still going to give you guys a whole bunch of examples of my favorite musicians playing awesome stuff and trying to dissect that. I'm still going to be bringing you the scales that have all the tension in it and some of those advanced topics. But another thing that my goal is with this podcast is to really teach you how music works, so that you have a foundation that will carry you through the rest of your life and career as a musician. And honestly, I would feel horrible if I didn't do that. And that's my fear, is that if I go for titles that are going to get me the most mileage, the most views, the most downloads, that's great for me, but I don't necessarily think that's great for you. And that's what this podcast is all about. After all, that's why we've been around for 100 episodes, is hopefully we're bringing you value, real life value that's going to carry over into all your musical endeavors. All right, so sorry for rambling about that for so long, but I just think it's an important thing to point out, and I wanted to give you a little bit of the psychology behind my decision to make that episode 100 and not, some crazy, amazing, difficult, triadic-based whatever. I just wanted to get back to the heart of why I really study music, and it's for simple things like that, but coming up with interesting ways to use simple material. Okay? All right, if you have any questions or feedback for me on this episode, you might hate what I just said. I'm not really sure. Feel free to send me an email telling me that you agree or that you couldn't disagree more with what I'm talking about. I'd love to hear from you either way, because I want to make these podcasts really reflect what you guys want to hear and learn about. All right. So thank you so much for being a listener. It's really amazing that we've gotten through 100 episodes of this podcast, and I just really enjoy sitting down to do it every week and hopefully helping some of you out there. All right. We'll see you on Friday with a regularly scheduled episode. Have an awesome week. Get on your instrument and start making some music. Bye.